my name is Yvette Chodash. I'm one of the founders of LCA Spotlight. That stands for Learning Content Accessibility. And we are a bi-weekly newsletter and a LinkedIn community. And the aim is to share an accessibility-related guideline to people who are new to accessibility, and also start a conversation around accessibility with those that are already familiar with accessibility to keep it at the forefront. And I'm really excited about this spotlight. I'm always excited when we have a guest talking to us about something, but this is something that I'm not totally familiar with. We'll be talking about PDFs and accessibility in PDFs, and I think I have the right person for that conversation. Tess Hutley is an inclusive content consultant who specializes in PDFs and digital accessibility, but you might be able to share a bit more information about yourself, Tess.
Sure, thanks, Yvette. So yes, my name's Tess. I work for Intopia. We're an inclusive, a digital accessibility agency and consultancy, and my specialty area is Word and PDF, and also other forms of content, so video and media in general. But my true love is PDFs and all their strange quirks. And that's my cat, Cora, who will probably come and go.
What's her name?
Cora.
Cora, okay. And we just discussed quickly that I had sent you over some questions that we gathered in the community and some of the questions that I added. And you you didn't just, prepare the answers, but you prepared slides as well as presentations. So I guess we can just get started with those.
We can, absolutely. So actually, that's the question is, do you want to actually ask the question or should I just go through them all?
Then you have my questions already. All I wanted to do, like the way I imagine this, is that we would discuss the three parts of creating PDFs, accessible PDFs. And one is the preparation work that goes into like how you prepare that document before you actually start editing it in the PDF tool. And then obviously all the editing that goes into making it accessible, and then anything that you need to do when you're exporting it and sharing it. But I think you can just go through your slides.
Awesome. All right, so I'll share my screen so that we can see my slides. So let's grab those up now. And yeah, of course, if I miss anything, if you have questions, just jump in and we can chat about anything that I'm saying. So I'm start from the first question, which is, what do you need to create an accessible PDF? And the short answer of that is you need whatever you're creating your document in, which is often a Word document, but sometimes we're creating PDFs from InDesign or other programs like CMSs, LMSs. Often we save content that's already been created. The thing about accessible PDFs is that there are two main components to what we need to consider for our PDF accessibility. The first one is the actual content of the PDF, and the second one is the technical accessibility of the PDF. And the technical accessibility are the unique features of PDFs and programs and how they interact with assistive technology. Often when people think PDF accessibility, they jump straight to screen readers. We call screen readers the poster children of accessibility because people tend to know what they are once they learn about accessibility. They're one of the first things they learn. And that's amazing. And they are a huge component of PDF accessibility. But our content accessibility is also really important, and that's what our document contains. So that's things like, what colors are we using? What fonts are we using? How have we structured this information? Have we put in semantic headings? And all of that is not done in the PDF program. It's done in whatever program we're creating this PDF in first. Our technical accessibility, which is how the PDF can communicate with assistive technology, that is stuff that we then do in the PDF program, but also a lot of that comes from what we create in the source program too. So when we create a Word document, if we use heading styles, for example, those are then given to the PDF program as semantic data to use. I'll talk more about how that works in a little bit, but the main point is that the majority of our PDF accessibility lives and dies on what we do in our source program. So if you create a source document well, and you've made it really accessible, and you've used that program's inbuilt accessibility scanner if they have one. So Microsoft Word, for example, has one. Adobe InDesign has one. And then you export it the correct way, which is a whole other kettle of fish and can cause problems in itself. But then if you do those two steps, you'll probably end up with a PDF that is more or less accessible. There's often tiny hiccups, but tiny hiccups are things that are easy to fix, or, are not going to necessarily break the entire document for the person using it. The only thing we'd ever really want to add to a PDF content-wise in a PDF program like Adobe Acrobat would be interactive form fields. Other than that, we don't want to be editing our content in the PDF program. There's a really good accessibility reason for that, which I will also mention later. I will explain what tags are because I think they're really important to understanding accessible PDFs. So when we are creating accessible PDFs, there's two phases. There's the creation and then there's the remediation. And remediation is when we open up our PDF program and we look at the tags and a couple of other things, but the tags make up the bulk of it. And tags are the system that PDFs use to communicate with assistive technology. And they look a little bit like HTML. You can find them in the tag panel. It's on the left in Adobe Acrobat. And in fact, I think it's on the left in most programs. And every piece of information in a PDF has to have a tag. And this tag tells assistive technology, mostly screen readers, but also to some extent keyboards, switch devices, voice to text, what is on the page. And these tags are automatically generated out of what we put into the original document. So a well-formatted Word document that has proper heading styles, as I mentioned, or has tables used correctly, has alt text on its images, all of that is exported into the PDF if it's exported correctly and used to generate those tag structures. So if a Word document is well created, it will make a mostly accessible PDF. It is harder when you're working in other programs, not impossible, but most programs designed for this making PDFs have these sorts of settings. When you are making PDFs from elsewhere, off the internet or off programs online, often you'll run into more hiccups, more likely to have errors. And those errors look like no tags at all, or they might just be incorrect tags. So I would recommend when you're thinking about PDF accessibility to also be thinking about the accessibility of your program that you're working in. For me, I do most of my work in Word, and that way you'll get really good PDFs. Mm-hmm. So that's the long answer.
For which question?
Our first question.
Okay, talking about that, so you mentioned that there's a lot going into preparing the document before you're putting into the Adobe Acrobat, for example, and you mentioned Microsoft Word having some built-in features. Is there a difference in between some of the tools that are available out there? I read that Google Docs is not the best for creating it or turning into accessible PDFs. Like which program would you recommend to use, or are they the same?
They're not the same. Microsoft Office products are like the gold standard, specifically the desktop versions, because they have more functions than the Office 365 versions. If you are using Office 365 online, at the end of your process, it's worth just downloading it to double check everything with their accessibility checker. And the Microsoft Accessibility Checker is amazing. It's got a recent update that's made it even better. It's really cool. I love Microsoft. They do great work with this stuff. Similarly, Adobe has accessibility tools across all of their tool suites, so you can create accessible documents when you know how to. They usually require multiple steps. So InDesign, for example, has settings that need to be turned on when you export, or all your work will just be for nothing. And they can be a little bit harder to get the hang of. I don't think Adobe really makes their products that easy to learn. And they also have blatantly incorrect information in their walkthroughs, particularly their accessibility walkthroughs. So always, caution with that. And, there's lots of communities out there designed to help. But things like Google Docs. So Google Docs don't actually create accessible PDFs, period. No matter what you do, if you download straight from a Google Doc to a PDF, you will have absolutely no tags. This is because of the file type that a Google Doc is. It's not actually a word processing document. It basically saves as kind of an image. The way around this would be to actually download your Google Doc as a Word file, and then in the next step, just export that into a PDF. It's 2 steps. It's very simple, and it will actually convert all of that information into tags. In terms of other programs, so a lot of PDFs sometimes come from CMS. My company, we use Confluence, which is an Atlassian program, and you have the ability to download these pages that we create as PDFs. and they are tagged, but often I find the tags are wrong. Not always and not completely, but there's always significant work needing to be done. So generally speaking, I think most CMS programs are going to have a mixed bag. And Canva, I know, does PDFs now, and I haven't actually had a look at how good their tagging is, but Canva is a company that cares a lot about accessibility, so I would expect them to be pretty good. And Firefox has just released the ability to edit PDFs in browser. Any edits come up as comments, but the tag structure stays the same. So when they first released it, they had a bug where it was breaking the accessibility of documents, and they seem to have fixed it overnight. So that's also fantastic. So yeah, it's really a mixed bag, but generally I always recommend, if you aren't sure, download your document as a Word file from whatever program you're using, and then just check the formatting on that, and then you can export that as a PDF, and you're probably going to fix half of the errors that would have otherwise happened.
Okay, that's really good to know. I wrote it down. So download it as a Word file, check it, and then in the Word file, in the ribbon, there's an accessibility checker as well that you can run, right?
Yes.
Okay. So you would recommend to have it, to run that accessibility checker before you move on to editing it in Adobe Acrobat?
Always, I reckon, use the word checker first, then the Adobe accessibility checker. And especially because you only get the accessibility checker in Adobe if you have the licensed version. If you have Adobe Reader, you don't have any accessibility toolkit. So all you can do is look at the accessibility in Word, make it as accessible as possible, and then you've got the best chance of creating an accessible PDF.
Okay, so I'm happy to move on with your slide.
Actually, that kind of works nicely in the sense that it brings me to the are there any free programs? Didn't make any slides for this because it's a quick answer, but there aren't actually any free PDF software that have accessibility features. So Acrobat Pro is the best option because Adobe basically invented the PDF format. They are the most comprehensive. Other licensed PDF programs like Foxit and Kofax are common, and they have the similar suite, pretty much all the same features, but again, only in the licensed version. There are plugins, though, that you can use to check PDF accessibility. So Common Look is a company that create a lot of plugins for people. They have a validator, which is a free plugin that basically functions as an accessibility checker. You can install that in Adobe Acrobat Standard, and it will check the accessibility of your program. And they also have another plugin that is a remediation tool, so you can use it to fix your tags and similar things. That one does cost money, but it is pretty great. It does have a bit of a steep learning curve, but it is really comprehensive. And then, yeah, if you don't have any way to get a paid-for program for remediation, as I mentioned before, your best bet is to just make sure your source program is using the accessibility checker there, Microsoft Word, for example, and then you'll most likely have a well-made document. Okay,
so you mentioned Common Look, Validator, and what's the third one?
Common Look Validator is one program, and Common Look, I think it's just Common Look PDF plugin, I think is what it's called. But if you go to the Common Look website, it's all one word, Common Look. They have lots of different products, and they're all designed for various forms of remediation in various platforms.
And it's a plugin to, where do you plug it in?
You can download it and plug it into your Adobe, your free version.
I see. Okay.
So it basically adds on the accessibility toolkit without you having to pay for the Acrobat license.
That's really good to know. Thank you.
It's great, and they have a lot of walkthroughs on how to use it. They'll even set up a time to show you how it works and things like that. They're doing really good work.
Okay, I'm happy to be carried on.
Great. Okay, well, we've sort of talked about our accessibility features in common programs, which I think is our sort of first section, which brings us into editing for accessibility, and that question of what are some common issues in PDF. So I thought I'd just go through some of the most common issues and talk about why they happen and what we can do to avoid them. So my first one is that the PDF isn't exported correctly, and this is a really common issue. You can do the most amazing work in the world in your source document, but if you don't do it the right way, when you export it, you'll lose all of it. This happens because there's a couple of ways to export. We'll use Word as an example. If you use Save as PDF or Save As and select PDF file type, perfect, no issues. if you use print to on any program, you will destroy all of your accessibility work. And that's because print to basically functions as a screenshot of the document. It doesn't transfer any semantic data over. So we always have to make sure that we're using the save as function when we create a PDF. In InDesign, there are actually settings that you need to select and turn on to export all of your data, and you can find more information on that online. I won't get into it because it would take a while, but basically you need to make sure you're always exporting the right way, and that's our main issue.
Sorry, do you mind? Yeah. Are we talking about exporting PDFs incorrectly before we're editing them in Adobe Acrobat, or from Acrobat?
Once we've finished in our source program, like our Word document, and we're going to create the PDF. I actually have a video I can show you if you'd like, of what happens with the two different save functions that I recorded in real time, so that it's more clear what I mean.
If you don't mind.
Yeah. So this is what happens when you save. There's no sound on this video, so it's just showing I've got a document and I'm using the save as function, which is just, save as, select a PDF file type, and it will generate that PDF for us. So this is the first step in our PDF creation. And what happens, so I've got my PDF that's been saved as, I open up my accessibility menu and my tags, and I can see that I've got a beautiful tag tree structure that's been generated for me because of the semantic data. But when I do print to PDF, so similar process, we go to file and use print and save as, and this is a really common thing that people do to create things, and particularly when you're getting them off the internet and things like that. But basically, if you do the same thing, you go to the accessibility menu, you open up the tags, and you get no tags whatsoever. Okay. So all of that semantic data is gone. And that's really the first step in any PDF creation, is making sure you're exporting it correctly, because that will affect how much work you then have to do afterwards.
Okay.
So
and not having those tags, just to clarify, not having those tags would mean that for example, a screen reader would be confused in what order to read information?
In some extent, it would be confused about the order. In some extent, it won't even see the information. So a tag contains a piece of information, and each tag contains the file type. So one tag, let's say a paragraph tag, will then contain a paragraph of text, and the screen reader goes to that tag and goes, this is a paragraph, and this paragraph contains this paragraph of text, and reads that text. But so when there are no tags, some screen readers can sort of guess what's on the page, but the order will be wrong, the type will be wrong. Some screen readers won't be able to read anything at all. It's basically like they'll have opened a blank document. So it's really problematic. Tags are really, really important. And tags are also used for assistive technology. So if you're a keyboard-only user and you navigate by tabbing, and you've got a form, which is those interactive form fields, you need those fields to be tagged as form fields so that you can use the tab key to go through them. And if you can't do that, you can't access those folds. So someone who doesn't have a mouse and can't click would have no way to then enter one of those form fields and fill it out. So it really, really impairs the document for anybody who uses any kind of technology.
Okay, so save as PDF. Gotcha.
Save as PDF. And speaking of tags, this kind of links into my next one, which is that the PDF wasn't finalized before we export it. And what I mean by that is there is an edit PDF function, which many people will be familiar with in PDF programs. You can open it up and you can actually edit the text on the page, change the color, change the font. And the problem with that is that it creates this scenario where it deletes all of the tags associated with the text that you're editing. And I have got another video again just to show exactly what I mean by that. I've just done it in real time, but so this is what a tag looks like, and you can see the element is just that line of text that I've got. So if I open up Edit PDF and I'm just changing the color of the font, so nothing overly complicated, changing the size of the font, and I'm closing it, suddenly that element is blank. So that would tell a screen reader there's nothing there. And not only does it do it to that line, it does it all around it. So it has this kind of bomb radius. and suddenly I've got this sort of black hole in the middle of my document, which is really frustrating.
Yeah.
And most PDF remediators like me have very early on done, 2 hours of work on a document, realized there's an error and gone to fix it, and then, destroyed half the tag tree. And that's how we learn that this happens. But once you learn it once, you never let it happen again. So really the key takeaway here is we don't want to be editing our PDF. Once something is a PDF, it's done. That's it. If you can avoid it, because otherwise you need to manually retag that and fix the tag tree. And that's sort of advanced PDF accessibility knowledge, which most people are not going to have the skills or the time to learn the skills for. So basically, if you do find an error in your PDF, it's going to be better to go back to the source document, fix it there, and just re-export it. Don't play around with edit PDF text edit function.
Now that's really good that you show it as well, what it does, because it's a good deterrent. Like, have it finalized, have it reviewed, have it checked, and then move on to
exactly.
Okay. What else?
Okay, so next one is, so this is talking about our content. The design work isn't accessible. So I mentioned this earlier, but there are things about our design that we need to consider, things like color, things like font. So for example, here's a fancy PDF flyer that I've got, and I need to mention color contrast for this one. So for people with low vision, colors with low contrast against each other can be practically invisible. This also affects people with color vision deficiency, I think is the official term, colloquially known as color blindness. And there are these free tools all over the internet. This one is a really good one. I think this is the WebAIM one that I've taken a screenshot of. But basically it will analyze, it's got these little eyedroppers, and you can eyedrop from the two colors, compare them against each other, and it gives you a contrast ratio. So this is a WCAG thing, the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, that we want everything to have a contrast ratio of 4.5 to 1. This one has a contrast ratio of 2.1 to 1, which is too low. So what that means is that this orange text against this red background might be invisible to some people, or very difficult to read. Actually, it's not just people with disabilities, but it affects when you're on a screen in bright sunlight. I don't know if you probably have experience with this. I can't read my watch when I'm in bright sunlight because the contrast is too low. And it's similar, you're using a phone. If you don't have high contrast, it's impossible to read. So it's actually a practical thing for a lot of people.
Absolutely. It doesn't look that good. Like I can't see those letters without really looking.
Exactly.
That's also something that's done before you move on to Adobe Acrobat. So you design your
yes.
with that in mind. Yeah. Okay.
Yes. So design your content before you create your PDF finally. And similarly, it's things like fonts as well. The understandability of our content, so our font choice, our layout, the styling. If it's really hard to read, it's going to affect people with blurred vision, people who use a screen magnifier, so they might be zoomed in up to 400%, up to 600%, I think, and it can be really hard to figure out what letters they are if the font is really fancy. Or what the word is. People with cognitive disabilities or people who are neurodivergent can really struggle to read things that aren't clearly laid out with good spacing. So it basically exhausts our cognitive energy. Again, this is something we want to fix before it becomes a PDF. So let's talk about semantic formats. So semantic data is the data that we're kind of coding into what we're creating. So for that, to explain, when we use Microsoft Word, if we use the list tool, it's actually putting a little bit of code in saying this is a list. And so when we transport it into PDF, PDF knows that's a list and will actually tell a screen reader this is a list. It's actually read out as list with 5 items, bullet item, bullet item. And then when they finish, it goes out of list back into wherever you are. It's pretty cool. Similarly with tables, it will say this is a table with 5 columns and 7 rows, and then it will go through each table. And I always want to talk about tables because a lot of people use tables for layout. This happens in InDesign or in Word, and what I mean by that is people won't use the columns feature. They'll put a table on the page, they'll put data into cells, and then they'll make the table invisible. And in doing so, they'll create a series of columns, or they'll put things around the page, or they might use it as, instead of a text box, they might use a single cell. And I understand the logic of doing that, but the problem is that when it's exported into a PDF, a screen reader thinks that that's a table. It doesn't know that you're just using the table to create 2 columns or to create a text box, and it will actually read out, this is a table with 2 columns and 2 cells, and first column, the heading will be whatever you put in, and then it will try and associate the data together. And I can actually show you an example of a screen reader reading a table so that you understand better what I'm talking about. I hope this is going to work with my sound. Let me know if you can't hear this, because I'm less familiar with this on Teams. Where's my play button? Here we go. Oh, no. Yeah, that should have sound. So unfortunately, I don't have my sound shared.
Do you want to narrate it, maybe?
Okay, I can tell you exactly what the screen reader will say. So basically, when it gets to the first column, it would say, here is a table. We've got 4 columns and however many rows that is, 9 rows. And then it would say first column, flexible Amy retail tariff, column 2, row 1, GSC exclusive, column 3, row 3, GSC inclusive, column 4, row 4, units. That's the heading row. When we get down to the second row, it will remind you what that heading row says. So it will say column 1, flexible Amy retail tariff, row 2, summer peak, something similar. So each time it encounters a cell, it's going to remind you what the column header of that cell is before it tells you what the content of that cell is. And that's great, because if you're in a really long thing and you're 17 rows deep, you might not remember which column is which. But the problem is that if you've used your table for layout, it's going to start associating really random stuff together, like, you know, I wrote a paragraph about sharks, and then I've gone down to my next thing, and it will actually read that entire shark paragraph out again as the header before it does the next one. Okay. Yes, so that's the issue. And basically, again, this is before we export into PDF, we need to make sure we're not using tables for anything other than an actual table, not using it for design and not using it for making it invisible or doing anything. A person who's using a screen reader has no way of knowing whether you've accidentally used a table for the wrong thing, or whether the table is broken, or the tags are missing, or something's gone wrong. They don't know. So it's going to create a very confusing experience. And that's actually what a table tag system looks like. It's really complicated. So it relies on identifying each cell of the table and matching it. And I'm just showing that so that, to make the point of, this is complicated, tables are complicated, they really should only be used for actual tables. Okay. Yes, and that's what, sorry, in the example, it's tagged an entire paragraph as one cell. And another thing that we often do that is the incorrect function.
Sorry. Could I just go back? So we were talking about semantic language before, and then we talk about table versus columns and list. But with semantic language, we also mean like headings, paragraphs, they're all labeled correctly, because then these will be converted into the tags. Yeah.
Yes. Yep. So if you use heading styles to create a heading, rather than just, you know, I've made my font bold and blue so it looks like a heading, we actually want to use the heading styles feature, because then the screen reader knows this is a heading, and it will actually read it out as heading level 2, heading level 3, that kind of thing. And screen readers can use headings to navigate around a page, so they can open up a little menu, see all of the headings and jump between them. They use them as navigation landmarks. So having a great heading system in a document means it's really easy to navigate for somebody. Well, just as it is for someone sighted, it's so much easier to find stuff when you can open up the bookmarks menu or the navigation pane in Word and just look at all the headings. So they are important for everybody.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry. Moving on to using enter.
To create our page breaks, basically, if you finish a page and you want to start on the next page, we want to actually use the insert page break function, or the shortcut of that is Control Enter, and it will start a new line on the next page. You don't want to hit enter, 35 times to get down to the next page. And the reason for that is each of those lines will be tagged as a paragraph when you get into a PDF, and it will read each of those out as paragraph blank, paragraph blank, paragraph blank, so on and so on. It's enough to drive anybody up the wall, but it's also confusing because people might not realize there is a next page. So always use, and this is semantic data as well, is this semantic data to say here is the page break and it starts on the next page. So
and it's the same if you want to create like a bigger space between, for example, the heading and the text, you would format that break, that line, to be bigger size rather than 3 enters.
Yes, in the insert line and paragraph space menu, there is a way to edit exactly how much space is before and after the paragraph or the line in individual or the heading, and that is the best way to add space into your document. And avoid using the enter key basically at all costs. Look, it's not the end of the world if you enter once or twice. It's fine. It happens. It's people get used to it. It's more when you've got 20 of them that it's a real issue.
Yeah, I can see that in the example. That could be really annoying. Yeah. Okay.
Oh yeah. All right, so our next one is our images need alt text. This is something that you can do in the PDF. So we're finally at the point where you don't have to necessarily do this in the source program. I always suggest doing it in the source program because someone might be reading your Word document, not your PDF program or PDF document. So start with your alt text in your source. But if you forgot or you missed it, you can really easily add alt text. So all images need alt text so that a screen reader knows what they are if they are meaningful images. And a meaningful image is something that's conveying information to the reader. There is a function in Adobe that is the set alternate text function, and what it will do is go through everything in your document that has the tag figure. So figure tag is what it tags images as, and it will go, here's a figure, here's your alt text in a little menu. You can add alt text if there isn't any, or you can change alt text if there is already alt text. And it will just go through every single one, and you can keep clicking next until you're finished. So it's really easy to do. We want to make sure that good alt text is conveying all relevant information that is contained in the image, that it, if any text is in the image, we want to put that in the alt text as well. So even if you've got an image where it seems like there's a whole sentence and you're like, surely this is irrelevant. Well, that's not necessarily up to us to decide. We just want to give the reader all of the same information that someone with vision would get, and that person can decide whether this is irrelevant or not. We want to exclude some unnecessary details. So I often see things really over-described. I literally yesterday saw an image of, it was a woman running in a park, and that's the relevant information, is it's a woman running in a park, but they'd also said behind her is a white gazebo, and on the road there are 3 cars. And honestly, people with vision aren't even clocking that information. That's not what we're taking from the picture. So there's really no reason to over-describe that to someone with a screen reader if it isn't the point of the image.
Yeah.
And of course, our tone is considered. So we need to think about what the image is doing in that document. So if it's there for humor, we can even try and make our alt text a little bit light and humorous. How do we tell someone what a meme is, for example, through alt text? We don't want to just describe the meme in most basic language. You want to actually try and capture the spirit of the image. So that's sort of next level, but it's something you eventually get into, and it's really interesting. There's a lot of dialogue out there about alt text, what makes it good, what should be considered, people going back and forth on things like, when do you, for example, mention what gender or what race somebody is in an image, when is that relevant and when is it not? And there are differing schools of thought on that. The whole conversation about describing yourself and your clothing when you start a speech, actually, from what I've seen, more of the blind community don't like that and find it irritating. But there are different schools of thought as well. So it's worth spending an afternoon reading about if you're interested.
No, we did a spotlight on alt text, and it's like an art. And there was a really good article that we shared in it as well that showed how the alt text can vary depending on the context. Like the one image can have 4 different alt text depending on the context, where you're presenting it, why you're presenting it, etc. But it's very interesting. But you also mentioned that you only add alt text if the image is relevant. If it's just decorative or it doesn't add anything, then you do need to mark it as null.
Yeah, so if you haven't marked it as decorative in your source program, you can do it in Adobe. It's called an background/artifact,
Okay.
or artifact straight from the tag tree. It's very easy to do. In the same menu you're using to add alt text, there's the little button that says or mark as decorative, and you can tick that. And that will actually mark it as what they call an artifact, and even just remove it from the tag tree. So once you've marked it as an artifact, you won't even see it in the tag tree anymore. It's gone. And there's an interesting thing about PDF, since you brought this up. There's a function called reflow, and it basically means that when you zoom in and out of a PDF, it reorganizes all of the information on a page to always be present. Similar to how a mobile layout on a website will reorganize it so that you don't have to scroll left and right, you can only scroll up and down. And images disrupt reflow. So there's no way to reflow a page that has a meaningful image on it. If it is marked as decorative, it will be ignored and the rest of the content will reflow. So when we are creating a PDF, or when I'm creating a PDF, I'm often a bit more ruthless about what I consider to be decorative versus meaningful, and I'm more likely to mark things as decorative than not. Because while if I was in a Word document, I might include the woman jogging in the park because it's fun and it adds tone. In the PDF, that could prevent the entire page from reflowing if I give that alt text, and it's really not adding very much. So I'll probably mark that as decorative to preserve the reflow function. Yeah, it gets very frustrating trying to figure out, when you tank reflow and when not. That's a whole thing in itself.
I'm learning a lot from this. Thank you.
Well, that actually brings me to the end of the most common issues. And from what you can tell, most of them occur when you're creating the PDF. They're not, things that happen in the PDF itself. Most of what we do in Adobe is just fixing up those tags. So those tags might be the wrong tag. Often the heading level might be wrong, or they might not have realized it's a heading. They might think it's a paragraph, and we can just really easily change the tag type through the tag tree. I didn't want to get too deep into the weeds on remediation because I think it's probably not the extent to which most people are going to be looking at PDFs. I think it's more important to get it right when you're creating the content, because there won't be as much needing to be fixed, or possibly even anything. It's possible to create a perfect PDF document if you make a really good Word document. So I think that goes to our next one, which is our issues are different from Word accessibility.
Because we've gone through the most common issues, and I thought actually that one of the issues was going to be the tagging, as you said as well, not labeling things correctly. But I also thought that it was going to be the focus order. Is it not one of those things that you would have to fix?
Okay, so that's a really complicated question.
Sorry.
In the sense that, no, that's fine.
In a nutshell.
In a nutshell, there are two ways that a screen reader will figure out the reading order. And there is a lot of information online that thinks it's the order panel, and that's what people think of as the reading order. And it's not for most screen readers. It actually comes from, again, the tag tree. So if we have all of our tags in the right order, and it's really easy to reorder tags, you just drag and drop them, we'll have a screen reader that can read in the right order. There is one screen reader that takes it from the reading, it's called the order panel, but it's colloquially often referred to as the reading order panel, and that is Apple products. So Apple VoiceOver, for some reason, goes from the order panel, not the tag panel. So yes, when we have a PDF, we do want to check that the order is right on both of them. The tags are more important, but we do need to look at both of them. The order panel is much simpler than the tag panel. It doesn't show you what the structure types are really. It just kind of has each piece in a row. And again, you can just drag and drop them into the right order. So very easy to reshuffle around. But the majority of our time and focus goes into the tag panel, making sure we have the right tag type and making sure the tags are in the right order.
That was beautifully done. Thank you.
I think it will come up again at some point, I think. So I think if I talk about the Word issues, it's really, actually, it's kind of is the same conversation that are the accessibility issues in Word different from PDF. hopefully it's kind of evident now that tags are the main unique thing about PDFs, and that our Word accessibility creates accessible PDFs. So the only thing that I would caution is there's actually a way to make interactive forms in Word, and it's completely inaccessible. It will never work with a screen reader no matter what you do. So if you have an interactive form, you always want to create it as a PDF, not as a Word document. And they can tag the PDF forms, and it works really well. The gold standard for interactive things is HTML. We always say if you can avoid making them as a document, it's better to have them as a HTML website, because that is usually the easiest to make accessible. But if you need it as a document, PDFs are the best possible format for our interactive forms. But that's, in terms of content, the content accessibility is very similar across both Word and PDF, and every program, of course, has individual quirks, but if we understand the principles of what makes content accessible, so things I mentioned like our color contrast and our layout, that is what we need to know if whether we're making a Word document or a PDF or a slideshow or a spreadsheet. Even Microsoft Office products all have a really basically the same set of buttons in each and functions. So if you know how to make a Word document accessible, you know 95% of what makes a PowerPoint accessible and an Excel document accessible. So it's best to focus your efforts there.
Okay. Thank you. That's my next question.
Next question is, what steps do you take to avoid issues when creating a PDF?
Tags.
Yes. So again, I'd familiarize yourself with content accessibility. Use your semantic formatting properly. So yeah, using our columns and our tables and our heading styles, not just making things look nice. And then running that accessibility checker in the source program that we're using, if it has one, usually they do. And then making sure we export it correctly. And then once we're in the PDF, we can actually run the accessibility checker again to pick up any further issues. So those are kind of the basic steps, and it's why I keep coming back to most PDF accessibility doesn't happen in Adobe. It happens in the source program. Yeah. And your also, next question. Oh, yep.
Sorry. Also, like, so in Microsoft Word, for example, there's an accessibility checker, and it runs through it and it flags up any issues that it thinks it has that you can fix. And then that's the same in Adobe as well. Is it the first thing that you would do, that you would run an accessibility checker in Adobe, or would you do that after you, like, what would be the exact steps that you would do in Adobe? Just like in a nutshell of like step 1, 2, and 3 when you open Adobe.
So I have a slide for that. So when I open up a PDF, the first thing that I would do is double check all the content. So are the links working? Is the color contrast okay? Are there any typos? Is there anything that needs to be fixed in the source document before I go any further with the tags? I don't want to work on the tags, realize there's an issue, and then lose all of that work. Next, I am going to open up that tag tree, and I'm going to go through each tag. I click on each tag and it highlights what on the page that tag corresponds to. So by doing that, I can check that every piece of content on the page has a tag, and I can check that those tags are correct. It's very easy to change a tag type. You right-click the tag, you click properties, and you can just select a new tag type in the menu. No drama, super easy. Once I've done that, so that's tag remediation. If something's missing a tag, I can there's the reading order tool in the accessibility menu. You can manually tag that way. And there's also an auto tag document feature. So if you do get a PDF that you didn't create and it's got no tags, or it's got like one tag and they're all wrong or something, if you run auto tag document, Adobe will try its best to tag everything for you. It's not 100% correct. It's never going to be, but it can make life a lot easier for you if you're starting from scratch. And then you can just go through and fix those tags up again. Just make sure they're the right tag type and in the right order.
So that auto tag thing is a part of Adobe?
Yes, it is. It's in the accessibility tools menu right up the top. It's the first option. So if you've got Adobe Pro, the licensed version, you've got that feature. Yeah. And I think the plugins have similar ones, like Common Look, I'm pretty sure has an auto tag. So yeah, pretty much any remediation tool will have that for you. Once we're sort of done remediating the tags, that's when we go and check our tab order. So I'd go through the document hitting the tab button and check that any interactive fields, so that's form fields and links, are in the right order and accessible through the tab key. If they're tagged well, they will be. And then I'd go to that order panel and make sure the reading order there is correct too, because of those Apple products. And also some older screen readers, I think back in the 90s, they originally were going off that, and those products are still around, so some people might have that. And then at this point, this is when I'd run an accessibility check. Once I've done all of my manual work to see if I've missed anything, and that's going to pick up technical errors like missing tags or weird tag order, missing alt text. It's also always has 2 prompts that come up, and they're not issues, but it just reminds you, have you checked the color contrast? And have you checked that there is a logical reading order? And logical reading order just means are the tags in an order that makes sense to a reader. It can't check those because those are things that it doesn't. Logical reading order is a human thing, and color contrast, you need an external thing to do. So it just reminds you, can you do them? And you can actually mark those manually as, yep, I've done it and it's passed. The accessibility checker is not 100% infallible, but it will get 99% of your issues. For that 1%, often the only way to pick them up is to test with a screen reader, which is something I do as a professional remediator, but I wouldn't expect, your average PDF creator to get into. I use NVDA, which is a free screen reader program, and it is something that is, if you're interested in, it's really interesting to learn how to use and to listen to how things are read out. So it's definitely fun to have a poke around with, and it will really expand your understanding of how PDFs are read by people who use screen readers. So it is, I wouldn't expect everybody to learn how to use a screen reader. They are, there's a lot of learning that goes into it. It can take years to master. But there are guides to your basic functions, and getting the hang of that, you can do a really quick check through a PDF to see that it's all reading right. So those are the sort of main steps that we go through as remediators.
That's beautiful. You just answered my question.
Excellent.
Where were we before I interrupted?
We were, honestly, I think.
Time. I don't know how quickly
you're gonna wrap it up. I mean, I'm all right. I'm nearly finished, so I can just, if you've got time, we can just go through the rest.
I'm fine.
Cool.
Just worried about you.
No, I'm right. Yeah. The next one was the external tools. This is a really easy answer because I've pretty much already answered it. The common look and things like those plugins. Other than that, the main external tool that you want to get the hang of using is one of those color contrast analyzers. TPGI has one, WebAIM has one. There's a bunch more, but these are free and they're really good and worth. I think the WebAIM one is just an inbuilt browser one. The TPGI one on the left is one that you can actually download to your desktop, so you always have it. That's my favorite one.
So Adobe doesn't have one that is built in? No,
they don't. And they can't even tell you if they can't compare colors in there. It's really interesting. I don't know why. I would have thought that it wasn't that difficult, but I've never understood why it's not something that's built in, especially because Microsoft Word has very recently gained the ability to tell you when your contrast is off. It's not complex the way this is. It won't tell you a contrast ratio or anything like that, but it can say, hey, I think the contrast on this is low. You should go check. Adobe doesn't do that at all. It's just hands off. I don't know. So yeah, it's odd, but I expect eventually it will be something, but it's just never been a priority, I guess.
There are very weird. So many other tools that you can use. So yeah.
Exactly. Okay. And then I think that brings to the last question, which is the best way to share accessible PDFs. And basically, if your PDF is downloadable, then all of the tags will come with it. If you view a PDF in a browser, none of the tags will be available and it will not be accessible to a screen reader. So you want to make sure that people who need it can actually physically download that file rather than just open it up. And you also want to make sure that any content you're sharing is in a tagged PDF format. We don't want to say, like for event companies, for example, will often send out an email with information and then say, just save this email. This is your ticket, this is your information. And to save an email, you usually use the print to function to save it to a PDF. And as we now know, print to will create an inaccessible PDF. So we actually always want to be giving people an accessible PDF, not asking them to create a PDF from information that we've given them, because they'll probably not make an accessible PDF out of that. And they might be someone who needs that, and we get issues. I'd also always suggest a secondary format if possible. So if we have a PDF and we aren't able to fix some of the errors, or we don't have the ability to spend a lot of time remediating tags, what we can do is just offer a secondary file format that's going to be more accessible. So Word documents are, much easier to use. There's no way to vanish the text. There is, in a way that you can in Acrobat if you don't have tags. So a Word document is always going to be slightly more accessible and harder to completely destroy. Mm-hmm. We can host something as a web page in HTML, and also EPUBs or text files are great for just text-based documents. The New Zealand government uses text files for some things because they're designed to work with technology. They're optimized for it. So when it is only text and you just, a wall of text or whatever, text files are great alternative. So yeah, always offering a secondary format basically can circumvent, getting pulled up on WCAG stuff if your PDF isn't accessible, because you can say, no, it's fine, the information is still available just here. And that was our last question, I think, other than sort of resources that I can recommend to people.
Okay, I have 3 more questions then.
Of course.
So that's just like a random, whatever you think. Like if you get like a 3-page document, how long do you think it would take you to make it accessible?
It really depends. If it's a 3-page document, it's been well done in the source program and it's mostly text, and it already has tags, I might only spend 10 minutes on it, just running all the checks, a couple of changes. It's so easy to change a tag type. If it's a 3-page document and it's full of lists that aren't tagged, tables that are tagged wrong, there's no alt text or whatever, all of the issues, it might take longer. It might take an hour. A 20-page document can sometimes take 8 hours or something to go through. And some of that is even not just doing the work, but just actually checking every single piece of information to make sure that it's all there and it's in the right order and that it's all tagged. That's sort of where a lot of the time goes. So unfortunately, the answer varies based on the document.
No, that's a great answer, because then again, it highlights how important it is to get it right in the source document, because you can save a lot of time there. Yeah, so much time. Like actually, once you have it right, it doesn't even take that long, because 10 minutes is not that long to make something accessible. So we can do it. So my next question is, I don't know Adobe. At my job, we basically outsource, media creation. We have a team that does that for us. So I don't touch Adobe or I don't create PDFs. I just have the source document in a way. If I were to pick it up, how easy would you say I would be able to create accessible PDFs? I'm just trying to encourage people to do that.
So it takes practice, I would say. And I think more than time, it's more how often are you doing it, because Adobe, and honestly all PDF programs, they're odd and they're fiddly, and I don't think they're often designed with user ease in mind. And so what I've found in my own, learning journey is that things constantly change. We forget where tools are. New bugs, every time they update screen readers, new bugs appear that weren't there before. And it helps to be really plugged into the community. And there are amazing communities online of people who are PDF professionals and will answer any question you have in 3 seconds. So it's sort of like a constantly updating practice. I think it can seem scary to get into, because I think tags can seem really overwhelming, but as a sort of hammering home, if you have a well-created document in the source, you don't have to do that much work with tags. Once you open up the tag tree and you have a click around and you learn the layout of the land, you can get started in, 2 hours. We run a course and I spend between 2 and 4 hours teaching people how to use the tags in more depth. And then they're off and they can go out into the world and do it. And, 2 to 4 hours is not enough to be an expert. And Adobe brings up so many bizarre bugs that you will encounter. And sometimes I've found bugs that have never been documented before. And I'm the first person that's been like, and because it's quite a small community of people who get really into the weeds on PDF. But you can be a more or less proficient accessibility creator in a day, basically. Less than, you can get the hang of it and get started, and then you'll get better and better as you go, and the more often you do it. It's just, if you do it really stop start, I think you'll probably forget things and not know about updates and things like that. So it's always good to, if you are doing it only rarely and occasionally, to get plugged into those communities that can help.
Yeah. And it sounds promising, like 2-3 hours to learn it, 1 day to learn it, and looking at it didn't seem that complicated.
That's good.
I'm like, haha, try me. Okay, so that was my last question. My last question is just basically, if anybody wanted to find out more about this topic, do you have any resources that you would recommend?
I do. So I've got a bunch of links I can send you, actually, so that you can share them with the group with this video. And those links that I've got, I'm just checking what they are so I can tell you. So we've got, first of all, I run a course, come learn from me. But so I've got a simple guide for you that's like a basic, 1-page do-don't thing in creating accessible PDFs, which is easy. And then I've got things that get harder. So we've got PDF. So the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, WCAG, actually have a series of PDF techniques. These are all online. They're sort of your bread and butter of getting to learn about what makes a PDF accessible. Each technique is one step in making it accessible. So the step might be make sure, all your headings have actual heading levels, something like that. I do caution with them because some of the techniques are wrong. It's not good from a usability perspective. But there's only like 2 or 3 of them that they're not going to break a document. They're supposedly for accessibility, but they actually make a worse user experience, even though they make things accessible. This is a weird concept we run into a lot in the accessibility community, which is that accessible does not equal usable. We have to think about the person behind the technology. We've also got WebAIM is a consortium online who do huge amounts of accessibility information, and they've got a series of PDF walkthroughs. And there's also an accessible and usable PDF documents guide that you can purchase. I think it's about 60 American dollars, I'm not sure, but it's amazing. It's like every single possible thing you could ever run into, and it's just all in one 200-page PDF, and you can kind of go through, and it's an accessible PDF, which is the best part. So yeah, basically I would also mention to be cautious with Adobe itself. Adobe has walkthroughs, and a lot of them say that they are walkthroughs for how to make your PDF accessible, and most of them are all right, but some of them have blatantly wrong information. For example, Adobe still thinks that screen readers take their reading order from the order panel, not the tag tree, in some places on their website, and that's wrong. So always use caution when you're looking at Adobe specifically, because you'd think you could just go there for the single source of truth, and you can't. So
okay, is that it?
That's it. My only other thing is, if you would like me now, turn my camera off instead of stop sharing my screen.
Okay.
Have I stopped sharing my screen?
You're back.
I'm back.
The
Fabulous.
screen's not sharing anymore, but I can see you.
Excellent. Was if you would really like, right now I can also open up a PDF and just really quickly show you how something might be manually tagged, if you would like to see something like that.
I'm going to say yes.
Awesome. Okay. Let me grab.
While you're doing that, We will arrange a way to for you to send these links over, the link to your course and then the WCAG PDF techniques and everything that you mentioned just now. Yeah.
Yeah, I will. I'll send those through to you, and you can, yes, distribute them. I think that should work. I want to make sure if I open up a pop-up, can you see that reading order panel?
I see a panel.
Does that come and go as I close it?
No.
Okay, I might need to just share my desktop rather than the actual program. That's fine. Screen 2. Here we go. Okay, so here's a completely untagged PDF that I've got. Oh, never mind. The PDFs are here. I can untag that. Hang on. Okay, great. Cool. All right. Oh, it's my other pages. Got it. All right. So in my tag panel, this is our accessibility menu here. Hang on. It lives down here, accessibility. Mm-hmm. When we open it up, this is the auto tag document. So if I ran that, it would tag all of this content on the page. And that would be our first step. But right now I can just show you how to manually tag things. So this is the reading order tool, brings up this little panel. It's so confusingly named because it works both with the tag panel and the reading order panel. But all I do is I drag my mouse around a structure and I give it a type. So this is an image, so I call it a figure. And when I do that, it appears here in the tag tree. And then I would do the same for the next heading. This is a heading level 1, and bam. So in my tag, I've got the content block. To change this tag type, it's literally just properties from the local menu, and then I could set it to anything. That's wrong, and I shouldn't do that, but it's just to demonstrate how easy that is. Mm-hmm. And you get things like these tables. So that comes up. We've got each row we can get into, and inside each row I can see each column. When we have images like this, so this is tagged this image as a meaningful image and I want it to be a decorative image, that's where I would select background/artifact and it would literally just disappear, but I'll not do that so I can show you the alt text. This is what happens when I use the set alternate text function. It actually can identify, I've tagged this as an image, so now it's come up and I can either type in the alt text or I can mark it as decorative. If I mark it as decorative, it's going to turn into an artifact here. And now that won't be read out by a screen reader. So that's really the majority of what PDF tag remediation looks like. And it's just going through, each line, checking that they're all tagged, finding what's missing and fixing them. And I'll show you while I'm here. This is the accessibility check function. When I start checking, it comes up with things in different categories. So this is that logical reading order I mentioned and the color contrast I mentioned. They've got the blue question mark because they need me to check, but it's able to say this red X is like, no, this is an issue. You haven't set a title for your document. That's something that's done in document properties. So it goes through each of those. It's saying, hey, you've missed tags. This is something to do with references. And here it's saying your heading level is wrong. So I can actually go to element 1. When I click on it, it shows me exactly which one it's talking about. And once I can go show in tags panel, I can find it and then I can, change the heading level to what it's meant to be, which in this case I think is a level 2. Done. So
this is how you make it look easy.
This is how you make it easy.
Make it look easy.
Yeah, I go pretty fast, but it takes a while to get up to that level of speed, but the more you do it, the more familiar you get with the interface and it just becomes a second language to you. So, and I find it fun. I don't know, some people I work with think PDFs are the devil, but I find it deeply satisfying. And if you're somebody who likes order and structure and making things neat, this is like the best thing in the world. It's so fun. So I recommend getting into it.
No, I can see how it's fun. Thank you. Is there anything else? I feel like we covered everything and more than I hoped that we would discuss.
I hope so. And I will just reiterate. I mean, the reason I spent so much time on the content accessibility today, not the tags, is because if you get the content accessibility right, you just don't need to do that much to the tags. I think for the average person who isn't an accessibility specialist and who is working in an environment where they are dealing with PDFs, it is better to focus your energy on getting your content right than it is to spend all of that energy learning about PDF remediation and the above. Obviously, in a perfect world, both. But I know, we're all very time poor these days, and particularly educators. So it's really the content that is key.
Yeah, I definitely took that away. Text and preparing your source document,
Yep.
preparing everything out of it. Okay, that was really, really helpful, Tess. I'm really glad that you agreed to have a chat with me and show me all these things. And if anybody wants to try your course, we will share the link in the description. And obviously, if they want to connect with you, they can do that via LinkedIn.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes. Okay. Well, I'm gonna let you go then, because it's been a pleasure, but it's also been a long recording.
Yes, I'm so sorry if anyone's still sitting here watching.
Not me at all, Tess. Honestly, not for me. But I'm like, I know it's morning for you, so you have to get to work as well. But I really appreciate the time, Tess, and it's been so helpful. So thank you very much.
No worries at all. Thanks so much, Yvette, and I'll send you through those links so you can share them.